All right, here we go. Reflective Practitioner Video Journal number 4 for week 8. This is about the phrase "what gets measured gets done" and how it applies to education and for assessment and accountability. Ironically enough, I've actually never heard that term, not at least the way it's stated here. But I think we've all heard a facsimile or another version of that saying or that aphorism. Whether it's with, SMART goals, or I remember a lyric saying that a goal is just a dream with a deadline. That kind of just speaks to the idea that you have to set parameters for any goal or anything you want to achieve, and that's so important in education. Two things that come to mind immediately for me when it comes to a situation or an initiative rather that didn't properly measure or appropriately measure and accurately measure out its goals and its targets is a couple years ago. I think back in 2013, LAUSD, which is the second biggest district in the nation, started its iPad initiative. It was a cutting edge idea that would bring an iPad to every student. Again, I don't know how many students on LAUSD, millions, a ton. But it was supposed to be a $1.1 billion, I think, dollar initiative. LAUSD partnered with Apple for the iPads and Pearson for the curriculum. And again, the intent was great. Close that technology and achievement gap by providing equitable access to resources and technology. LAUSD being, an urban district with a lot of students not having access to personal technology. Even in 2013-14, less than 5 years ago, that technology gap was still huge. Not every single kid had smartphones yet. Today, almost every single kid has a smartphone. I mean, there's barely any phones that aren't smartphones. It's, a huge contributing factor why. But back to my point, they had a lot of money behind it. It had big names, big players in both the educational world and technology world. My school at the time was one of the ones chosen to implement the initiative. I think they were starting with a rollout of 40 to 50 schools. Everyone was so excited. Proponents were saying it was going to level the playing field. It was going to close the socioeconomic gap and eventually make kids more competitive and ready for the global landscape. And of course, the reach exceeded the grasp of the initiative. Problems started rolling in, things that were not detailed appropriately. The first was security and safety aspect. One, kids hacking the system, and two, because this was an initiative that was planned to have kids take home their own iPads, for the majority of these kids who live in big urban areas with issues like gang violence, domestic violence, crime, you're making them targets, carrying iPads in their backpacks. Moreover, the maintenance and upkeep was not measured appropriately. The logistics were just a nightmare. Our school received the iPads, but then once it came to, like I said, the maintenance and the upkeep, internet issues, connectivity issues, Pearson itself didn't have the full curriculum ready, which pushed back the rollout date. They only had samplings. It was just a massive, massive headache that if I remember correctly, I think a year later the initiative was cut off. I believe Apple and Pearson ended up having to pay back millions of dollars to LAUSD. So that's an example of a huge, nationally both acclaimed and criticized initiative that just didn't measure it out appropriately. They measured some things, the costs, the software implementation, but all the finer details, security, maintenance, those things were not appropriately discussed, detailed, and planned out. Another topic that comes to mind is teacher performance and teacher pay tied to academic achievement measurements, the SBAC, IEPs, ICA, standardized testing. If what gets measured gets done, should we measure student achievement as a metric for determining teacher pay and teacher qualification and quality? That's a huge controversy in education. I don't know the answer. I don't know that I have a side for that. On the one hand, I think it's so volatile to place teacher compensation and teacher quality or measure teacher quality based on student achievement. But on the other hand, what other industry is not determined by the quality of its service or the outcomes of its product or service for that matter? So I don't know. For me as a leader, I just know being data informed and data driven is so important. Not only putting deadlines, but as much as possible establishing SMART goals that are measurable, achievable, and realistic. I think that's one of the aspects of the SMART goals that are most often overlooked. I think people's eyes and their hearts can get bigger than, I don't know, the capability or reality of the situation, because we're all idealistic by nature if you're in education, right? But I think as a leader, you have to have evidence for everything. People will not follow you if you can't justify with concrete proof, empirical evidence, sometimes anecdotal evidence. But again, empirical evidence is the currency of the land. So as a leader, you just have to provide those things.